Ambassador Zarathel stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station, her silver scales catching the light from the nearby star system. The delicate fins along her neck fluttered with nervous energy as she watched the human transport ship approach. Inside that vessel was her future husband, a man she had never met, chosen through careful political calculations rather than any romantic inclination. The Calorian Empire had been at war with the human colonies for 3 years. What had started as border disputes over mining rights had escalated into full-scale conflict, leaving thousands dead on both sides. The humans, despite being vastly outnumbered, had proven surprisingly resilient. Their tactics were unpredictable, their technology crude but effective, and their soldiers fought with a ferocity that puzzled Calorian military analysts. The peace negotiations depend on this marriage, Admiral Vextar had told her during the briefing. Your union with a human representative will create the blood bond our people require to trust any treaty. The humans have agreed to this arrangement, though we're not sure why. Zara understood perfectly why. The humans were losing. Their colonies were under siege. Their supply lines stretched thin, and their fleets outnumbered 10-1. They needed peace as much as the Calorians, but neither side could afford to appear weak. A marriage alliance was the perfect solution, allowing both governments to claim victory while ending the bloodshed. The transport ship docked with a soft vibration that Zara felt through the deck plates. She adjusted her ceremonial robes, the deep blue fabric marked with the silver threading that indicated her diplomatic rank. Her personal guard, Captain Mordun, approached with measured steps. The human delegation has arrived, Ambassador. Are you prepared to meet your betrothed? Zara nodded, though her stomach churned with uncertainty. She had studied human physiology and culture extensively, but the reports were contradictory. Some described humans as barbaric warriors who ate their own dead. Others portrayed them as clever merchants and skilled engineers. The truth, she suspected, lay somewhere between these extremes. The delegation entered the formal reception hall with surprising quiet. Zara had expected boisterous voices and heavy footsteps based on the reports of human behavior in combat. Instead, the group moved with professional dignity. There were 6 of them, all wearing simple black uniforms with minimal decoration. The human who stepped forward was not what Zara had imagined. He was tall by human standards, but still shorter than most Calorians. His hair was brown and cut short, his skin weathered by what she assumed was exposure to natural starlight. His eyes were green, an unusual color among the humans she had seen in intelligence briefings. Most importantly, he carried himself with quiet confidence, rather than the aggressive posture she had been told to expect. I am Marcus Chen, he said, his voice calm and measured. I understand we are to be married to seal the peace between our peoples. His directness caught Zara off guard. There had been no formal introduction, no recitation of titles or accomplishments, no diplomatic pleasantries. He had simply stated the facts as he understood them. I am Ambassador Zarathel of the Calorian Empire, she replied, falling back on formal protocol. The marriage contract has been approved by both our governments. The ceremony will take place in 3 days, allowing time for the proper preparations. Marcus nodded. I've reviewed the terms. The marriage will be legally binding under both human and Calorian law. We'll establish residence on the neutral station at Terminus Point. Any children will have citizenship in both societies. The clinical way he discussed their future together made Zara's fins flatten against her neck in irritation. Did he feel nothing about this arrangement? Was this how humans approached all major life decisions? Perhaps you would like to know something about me beyond the official reports, she said, unable to keep a sharp edge from her voice. For the first time, Marcus smiled. The expression transformed his entire face, revealing warmth she hadn't expected. I'd like that very much. The reports were pretty basic. They said you're one of the youngest diplomats ever appointed to ambassador rank, that you speak 7 languages, and that you have a reputation for finding creative solutions to impossible problems. What they probably didn't mention is that I enjoy ancient poetry, I'm terrible at zero-gravity sports, and I collect musical instruments from different worlds, Zara found herself saying. The admission surprised her. She hadn't planned to share personal details. The reports on me were probably even worse, Marcus replied. They probably said I'm a colonial administrator from the outer territories with no formal military training. That's exactly what they said. Well, it's true, as far as it goes. What they didn't mention is that I grew up on a frontier world where everyone learns to handle themselves in a crisis. I can pilot most small spacecraft, I'm not bad at cooking, and I play chess badly but enthusiastically. Despite herself, Zara felt some of her tension ease. Marcus seemed genuine, without the calculating demeanor she was used to from career politicians and military officers. Perhaps this arrangement wouldn't be as difficult as she had feared. The next 2 days passed quickly. Marcus proved to be intelligent company, asking thoughtful questions about Calorian culture and sharing stories about life in the human colonies. He treated the marriage preparations with the same matter-of-fact attitude he applied to everything else, neither expressing enthusiasm nor complaint. The ceremony itself was a blend of human and Calorian traditions. Zara wore the silver and blue robes of her people, while Marcus dressed in formal black with gold accents. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising to honor the peace between their peoples and to build a life together based on mutual respect. What struck Zara most was Marcus's composure throughout the ceremony. While she felt the weight of history and the eyes of both governments upon them, he remained calm and focused. When he spoke his vows, his voice was steady, and his words seemed sincere rather than merely diplomatic. The reception afterward was carefully orchestrated to demonstrate the newfound alliance. Calorian officers shared toasts with human diplomats, while musicians from both cultures performed together. Zara found herself genuinely enjoying the celebration, particularly watching Marcus navigate conversations with beings whose languages he didn't speak and whose customs were alien to him. "You're adapting well," she told him during a quiet moment on the observation deck. "It's not that different from frontier diplomacy," he replied. "When you're trying to negotiate water rights with settlers who've been feuding for generations, you learn to read people pretty quickly." "Is that what this is to you? Just another negotiation?" Marcus considered the question carefully before answering. "No, it's more than that. This marriage affects millions of people. If we can make it work, if we can build something real between us, it proves that humans and Calorians can coexist. That makes it the most important thing I've ever done." His sincerity caught Zara by surprise. She had expected him to give a diplomatic answer, but he had been genuinely thoughtful. Perhaps there was more to this quiet human than she had realized. Their new home on Terminus Point was modest by diplomatic standards, but comfortable. The station had been constructed specifically to house the joint human-Calorian administration that would oversee the peace process. Their quarters included separate private spaces and a shared common area where they could work together on the complex task of building trust between their peoples. The first weeks of marriage were surprisingly pleasant. Marcus proved to be an excellent partner in their diplomatic duties, bringing a practical perspective that complemented Zara's more theoretical approach. He had an intuitive understanding of how to build consensus among groups with conflicting interests, a skill that served them well as they mediated disputes between colonists and Calorian merchants. In private, they maintained a respectful distance while gradually getting to know each other. Marcus was an early riser who spent his mornings exercising in the station's gymnasium. Zara preferred to begin her days reviewing intelligence reports and diplomatic correspondence. They shared meals and discussed their work, finding common ground in their commitment to making the peace hold. What puzzled Zara was how different Marcus was from other humans she had encountered. The soldiers she had interrogated during the war were loud, aggressive, and prone to emotional outbursts. The merchants who traded in Calorian space were pushy and often dishonest. The diplomats who had negotiated the ceasefire were calculating and verbose. Marcus was none of these things. He spoke quietly and chose his words carefully. He listened more than he talked. When he disagreed with someone, he stated his position calmly and supported it with facts rather than rhetoric. He seemed completely at ease with silence, never feeling the need to fill quiet moments with unnecessary conversation. "Were you always this calm?" Zara asked him one evening as they shared dinner. "What do you mean?" "You never seemed to get angry or upset. Even when the Centauri delegates were being deliberately insulting yesterday, you just smiled and kept working toward a solution." Marcus set down his fork and considered her question. "I learned early that losing your temper usually makes problems worse, not better. When you're dealing with people who are scared or desperate, staying calm helps everyone think more clearly." "But surely there are things that make you angry?" "Of course. I just don't let the anger control my actions." There was something in his tone that made Zara think there was more to the story, but she didn't press. They were still learning to trust each other, and she respected his privacy. As the months passed, their partnership deepened into something approaching friendship. They developed an easy working relationship and found they enjoyed each other's company. Marcus proved to have a dry sense of humor that matched Zara's own, and their evening conversations became the highlight of her day. The peace was holding. Trade agreements were being negotiated, colonial boundaries were being mapped, and the joint patrol fleets were working together with increasing effectiveness. Both governments were pleased with the progress, and Zara began to believe that their marriage might actually achieve its intended purpose. It was during their 6th month together that the first signs of trouble appeared. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet moving toward the border between human and Calorian space. The ships weren't broadcasting identification signals, and their configuration didn't match any known design in either fleet. "Pirates?" Marcus suggested when the intelligence reports reached their desk. "Too organized," Zara replied, studying the formation patterns. "This looks like a military operation, but not from any government we know." The mystery deepened when the fleet reached the outer rim of the neutral zone and began broadcasting a message on all frequencies. The transmission was in ancient Calorian, a ceremonial language that hadn't been used for everyday communication in over 1,000 years. "Can you translate it?" Marcus asked. Zara's fins had flattened against her neck as she listened to the archaic words. "It's a declaration of war," she said quietly. "They're calling themselves the pure flame of Caloria. They claim that the peace treaty is an abomination and that both our peoples have been corrupted by alien influence." "Fanatics," Marcus said with disgust. "Religious extremists who believe that contact with other species is spiritually contaminating," Zara confirmed. "They were exiled from Calorian space centuries ago. We thought they had died out in the outer rim." "How many ships?" "The sensors show at least 200 vessels, including several dreadnoughts. That's larger than most of our combined patrol fleets." Marcus studied the tactical display with the same calm attention he brought to everything else. "They'll hit the colonial settlements first. Maximum psychological impact, and the defenders will be scattered across too many worlds to coordinate an effective response." His analysis was correct, and it terrified Zara. If the Pure Flame succeeded in their attacks, the fragile peace between humans and Calorians would collapse. Both sides would blame the other for the security failure, and the war would resume with even greater intensity. The emergency session began within hours of the Pure Flame's declaration. Representatives from both human and Calorian governments gathered in the main conference chamber of Terminus Point, their voices rising in heated debate as they tried to assign blame for the crisis. "This is clearly a Calorian problem," declared Admiral Harrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force. "These are your people, your extremists. Deal with them." "They ceased to be our people when they rejected our society and fled to the outer rim," Admiral Vextar shot back. "We have no more control over them than you have over human pirates." Zara watched the argument escalate with growing alarm. The careful trust that had been built over months of negotiation was crumbling in a matter of hours. She glanced at Marcus, who sat quietly at her side, studying the tactical reports with intense concentration. "The blame doesn't matter right now," Marcus said suddenly, his quiet voice cutting through the shouting. "What matters is that they're going to hit civilian targets, and we need to be ready." "Easy for you to say," Admiral Harrison replied. "Your colonies are on the far side of human space. It's our outer settlements that are in immediate danger." "Actually, I think you're wrong about their strategy," Marcus said, pulling up a star chart on the main display. "Look at their current position and course heading. They're not moving toward the colonial settlements." Every eye in the room focused on the holographic display as Marcus traced the enemy fleet's trajectory with a laser pointer. "They're heading straight for the Calorian commercial hub at Veltar Prime," he continued. "Maximum symbolic value, heavy civilian population, and the destruction would cripple trade between our peoples. If they can break the economic ties that bind our alliance, the political agreement becomes meaningless." Admiral Vextar's scales shifted to a darker shade of silver as he considered Marcus's analysis. "You may be correct. Veltar Prime has over 50 million inhabitants and virtually no military defenses. It was never considered a strategic target." "How long until they reach it?" Zara asked. Marcus performed quick calculations in his head. "At their current speed, maybe 4 days, 5 at most." "The nearest Calorian fleet is 8 days away," Admiral Vextar admitted, "and our ships at Veltar Prime are mostly customs cutters and patrol boats. They wouldn't last 10 minutes against a force this size." "What about the Joint Patrol Fleet?" Admiral Harrison asked. "Scattered across 6 systems doing peacekeeping duties," Zara replied. "Even if we recalled them immediately, we couldn't assemble more than 30 ships." 30 against 200, Marcus mused. "Those aren't good odds." "They're impossible odds," Admiral Harrison corrected. "We need to evacuate Veltar Prime and write it off as a loss." 50 million people can't be evacuated in 4 days, Admiral Vextar protested. "And if Veltar Prime falls, the Pure Flame will have proven their point. Other extremist groups will rally to their cause." The argument resumed with even greater intensity. Some wanted to attempt a hopeless defense, others insisted on evacuation, and a few suggested using the crisis as an excuse to return to war. Zara felt the peace slipping away with each passing minute. Marcus stood up quietly and left the conference room. Zara hesitated for a moment, then followed him. She found him in their private quarters, packing a small travel bag with military efficiency. "What are you doing?" "Getting ready to leave," Marcus replied without looking up. "The evacuation hasn't been authorized yet." "I'm not evacuating." Marcus sealed the bag and turned to face her. "I'm going to Veltar Prime to help with the defense." Zara stared at him in shock. "Marcus, you're a colonial administrator. You have no military training. You'd be throwing your life away for no reason." "I have more military training than you think," he said quietly. "And there might be something I can do to help." "Like what?" "You said yourself the odds are impossible." Marcus moved to the wall display and called up detailed specifications for the Pure Flame ships. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease, pulling up technical data that Zara hadn't even known was available. "Their fleet is impressive, but look at the formation structure," he said, highlighting certain vessels. "Those dreadnoughts are old Calorian designs from before the technology sharing agreements. They've been modified, but the basic architecture is still the same. That means they have the same vulnerabilities." "What vulnerabilities?" "The shield generators are positioned to protect against frontal assault, but they're weak on the ventral surfaces. A small, fast ship could get underneath the firing arcs and hit the weak spots." Zara studied the display with growing understanding. "You're talking about a suicide run." "Not necessarily. With the right pilot and the right ship, it might be possible to disable several dreadnoughts before they knew what was happening. And you think you're the right pilot? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. There are things about me that weren't in the official reports, he said finally. Things I didn't think were relevant to our marriage or to the peace process. What kind of things? I wasn't just a colonial administrator before I came here, Marcus admitted. That was a cover identity. My real job was more complicated. Zara felt a chill run through her. What was your real job? Deep reconnaissance. When the colonial government needed to know what was happening in contested space, they sent small teams to gather intelligence. I was team leader for most of those missions. The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. You were a spy, a military operative. Among other things, Marcus confirmed. I've spent most of the last 10 years flying solo missions in hostile territory. I know every class of ship in both our fleets, and I've studied Calorian naval tactics extensively. Why didn't you tell me? Because it didn't matter. That part of my life was over. I came here to build peace, not to fight wars. Zara's mind raced as she tried to process this revelation. The quiet, thoughtful man she had married was actually a trained operative with years of combat experience. No wonder he had seemed different from other humans she had encountered. So now you're planning to go back to war. I'm planning to save 50 million innocent lives, Marcus corrected. If I can disable enough of their heavy ships, it might buy time for evacuations or reinforcements. It's still a suicide mission. Maybe. But doing nothing guarantees that Veltar Prime falls and the peace process dies with it. At least this way there's a chance. Zara realized that nothing she could say would change his mind. The same quiet determination that made him an effective negotiator also made him willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. If you're going, I'm coming with you, she said. Absolutely not. I'm the best translator of ancient Calorian in either fleet, Zara insisted. If you're right about their ship designs, I might be able to help you exploit their weaknesses. And if you're captured, you'll need someone who can communicate with them. Marcus shook his head. It's too dangerous. If both of us die, the marriage alliance dies with us. If I let you go alone and you die, the marriage alliance still dies. At least this way we have a better chance of success. They argued for another 20 minutes, but Zara was as stubborn as Marcus was determined. Eventually, he gave in to her logic, though she could see he wasn't happy about it. We'll need a fast ship, Marcus said, already planning their mission. Something small enough to avoid detection, but with enough firepower to threaten a dreadnought. The diplomatic courier ship has stealth capabilities and plasma torpedoes, Zara suggested. That could work. How long to reach Veltar Prime? 3 days if we push the engines hard. Marcus nodded. That gives us maybe 18 hours to study their fleet deployment and plan our attack. They spent the next several hours making preparations. Marcus requisitioned additional weapons and sensor equipment, while Zara copied all available intelligence on the Pure Flame and their ships. They told the other diplomats they were conducting a special reconnaissance mission, which was technically true, even if it didn't convey the full scope of their plans. The courier ship, Harmony, was sleek and fast, built for speed and stealth rather than comfort. Marcus took the pilot's seat with the ease of long practice, his hands moving over the controls as if he had flown this exact ship 100 times before. How many different types of spacecraft have you piloted? Zara asked as they cleared the station's docking bay. Most of the common models in both fleets, Marcus replied, initiating the jump to hyperspace. Deep recon teams have to be adaptable. We often had to steal enemy ships or fly captured vessels. As they traveled toward Veltar Prime, Marcus shared more details about his previous life. He had been recruited for special operations, straight from the Colonial Defense Forces, chosen for his ability to think quickly and adapt to changing situations. His missions had taken him throughout Calorian space, gathering intelligence on military installations and political developments. "I was actually on Caloria Minor when the peace negotiations started," he revealed. "My orders were to assess whether your government was negotiating in good faith or just buying time to build up their forces." "And what did you conclude?" "That both sides were exhausted and genuinely wanted to end the war. That's why I volunteered for the marriage assignment when it was proposed." Zara was quiet for a while, absorbing this new information about her husband. She felt betrayed that he had kept such important secrets, but she also understood his reasons. Their marriage was supposed to be a symbol of trust between their peoples, not a reminder of the espionage that had characterized the war years. When they reached the edge of the Veltar system, Marcus brought the ship out of hyperspace and activated the stealth systems. The pure flame fleet was exactly where his calculations had predicted, moving in tight formation toward the inhabited planets. 217 ships, Zara counted, studying the sensor readings. 17 dreadnoughts, 43 cruisers, and the rest are destroyers and support vessels. Marcus was studying the formation patterns with intense focus. "Look at how they're arranged," he said. "The dreadnoughts are in the center, surrounded by smaller ships. Classic defensive formation, but it also means they can't maneuver quickly." "What's your plan?" "We wait until they engage the defending forces, then use the confusion to get close to the dreadnoughts. If I can disable their shield generators, even the patrol boats might be able to damage them." "And how exactly do you plan to disable 17 dreadnoughts?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Very carefully." They spent the next several hours observing the enemy fleet and studying their movement patterns. Marcus seemed to have an intuitive understanding of fleet tactics that surprised Zara. He predicted course changes and formation shifts with uncanny accuracy, as if he could read the enemy commander's mind. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a gap in the enemy formation. "When they launch their attack, that's our opening." The assault on Veltar Prime began exactly as Marcus had predicted. The Pure Flame Fleet spread out to attack multiple targets simultaneously, their tight formation dissolving into smaller battle groups. The defending patrol boats fought bravely but were hopelessly outmatched, their light weapons barely scratching the enemy's heavy armor. "Now," Marcus said, bringing the Harmony out of stealth and diving toward the largest dreadnought. What happened next would challenge everything Zara thought she knew about space combat and about the quiet man she had married. The transformation was instantaneous and complete. The moment Marcus engaged the enemy, every trace of the quiet diplomat vanished, replaced by someone Zara had never seen before. His hands moved over the controls with fluid precision, his eyes tracking multiple targets simultaneously, his voice calm and steady as he narrated their attack run. "Enemy dreadnought, pure resolve, bearing 27 Mark IV. Shield harmonics match the old Calorian Vengeance class specifications. Ventral generator should be located 30 meters aft of the main sensor array. The Harmony dove beneath the massive enemy ship, its stealth systems straining to keep them invisible. Through the viewport, Zara could see the dreadnought's hull stretching endlessly above them, bristling with weapons that could vaporize their small ship with a single shot. "How do you know all this?" she whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might somehow give away their position. "I've been inside ships like this," Marcus replied, his attention never wavering from the controls. 3 years ago, intelligence needed detailed scans of Calorian military technology. I spent 2 weeks aboard a captured Vengeance-class dreadnought, learning every system, every weakness. His fingers danced across the weapons console, programming the plasma torpedoes with surgical precision. "Targeting the primary shield generator now. When I fire, their defensive systems will automatically rotate to compensate. That gives us maybe 8 seconds to hit the secondary generator before they can bring weapons to bear." The first torpedo struck exactly where Marcus had predicted. The dreadnought's shields flickered and adjusted, creating a brief window of vulnerability. Marcus had already fired the second torpedo before the first impact registered on enemy sensors. "Direct hit on secondary generator," he reported. "Shields down to 40% efficiency on the ventral surface. Moving to the next target." What followed was a display of piloting skill that defied everything Zara thought she knew about space combat. Marcus flew the Harmony through formations of enemy ships like a dancer moving through music, each movement perfectly timed. Every course correction calculated to keep them in the brief gaps between sensor sweeps. "Pure justice, sacred fire, and divine retribution," he said, naming each dreadnought as they disabled its shields. "Righteous fury. Next, then we swing back to finish the cruiser screen. Marcus, there are 17 dreadnoughts out there. We can't possibly—" "We don't need to destroy them all," he interrupted, rolling the ship to avoid a spread of missiles from a pursuing destroyer. "We just need to level the playing field enough for the local defenders to have a chance." By now, the Pure Flame fleet had realized they were under attack from an unseen enemy. Ships were breaking formation, turning inward to search for the source of the coordinated strikes that were systematically crippling their heavy units. But Marcus seemed to anticipate every move they made, positioning the Harmony exactly where the enemy wouldn't think to look. "How are you doing this?" Zara demanded as they skimmed past a cruiser's hull, so close she could see individual hull plates. "It's like you can see the future." "Pattern recognition," Marcus replied, launching another spread of torpedoes. "Every fleet commander has habits, preferred formations, standard responses to different threats. Once you understand the pattern, you can predict their movements. But you've never fought these specific people before?" "No, but I've studied Calorian naval doctrine extensively. The Pure Flame may be religious extremists, but they're still using Calorian tactical principles. Their commander is probably a former fleet officer who was exiled along with the rest of them." As if to prove his point, Marcus suddenly yanked the ship into a violent evasive maneuver just as a barrage of energy beams swept through the space they had occupied moments before. "Admiral Kethmore, if I had to guess," he said conversationally. He always liked that particular ambush pattern. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Marcus moved through the enemy fleet like a ghost, striking precisely where they were weakest and vanishing before they could respond. One by one, the massive dreadnoughts found their shields failing, their weapon systems damaged, their coordination disrupted. The turning point came when Marcus managed to disable the flagship's main communications array. Without centralized command and control, the Pure Flame fleet began to fragment, individual captains making their own decisions about how to respond to the invisible threat. "Now," Marcus said, bringing the Harmony around for another attack run. "While they're confused and separated, the patrol boats can actually hurt them." He was right. The Calorian defenders, who had been retreating in the face of overwhelming odds, suddenly found themselves facing damaged ships with failing shields and disrupted command structures. Light plasma cannons that had been useless against full military shielding began to find their targets, exploiting the gaps that Marcus had created in the enemy's defenses. But the Pure Flame weren't finished yet. Admiral Kethmore might have been predictable in his tactics, but he was still a capable officer with decades of experience. As his fleet regrouped, he began to adapt to the new threat, spreading his ships wider to make stealth attacks more difficult and concentrating his fire to create kill zones where no small ship could survive. "He's learning," Marcus admitted as they barely escaped a coordinated barrage from 3 destroyers. "We need to end this quickly." "End it how?" "We've used most of our torpedoes and the ship's stealth system is starting to overheat." Marcus studied the tactical display for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "The flagship," he said finally. If we can take out Admiral Kethmore personally, the fleet will lose cohesion completely. The flagship is the most heavily defended ship in the fleet. It's also the most predictable. Kethmore will position it where he can maintain command and control over the entire battle. That means... Marcus's fingers traced paths across the display. There, behind the gas giant's third moon, he's using the gravitational field to mask his sensor signature while staying in communication range with his scattered ships. Zara looked at the tactical projection with growing alarm. Marcus, that's impossible. Even if you're right about the location, the flagship has full shields, multiple escort ships, and probably fighter squadrons for close defense. All true, but it also has one critical weakness that Kethmore doesn't know we know about. What weakness? Admiral Kethmore was court-martialed 15 years ago for an incident involving the unauthorized modification of his ship's defensive systems. He was cleared of the charges, but the modifications were never reversed. I know this because I was the intelligence operative who discovered the modifications during a deep recon mission. Marcus began plotting a course toward the gas giant, his movements swift and sure. He replaced the standard shield projectors with a more powerful system that draws energy directly from the main reactor. It provides better protection, but it also creates a feedback loop that can be exploited. Exploited how? If you can overload the system at exactly the right moment, the feedback surge will shut down the entire defensive grid for about 30 seconds, long enough for a direct assault on the bridge. Zara stared at him in amazement. You memorized the technical specifications of an illegal ship modification you discovered 15 years ago? I memorize everything that might be useful someday, Marcus replied. That's what kept me alive through 10 years of deep reconnaissance missions. The approach to the flagship was the most dangerous part of their mission yet. The escort ships were positioned in overlapping fields of fire, their sensors sweeping constantly for any sign of attack. Marcus had to time their approach perfectly, using the gas giant's radiation to mask their signature while staying far enough away to avoid the gravitational distortions that would tear their small ship apart. "Contact!" one of the escort destroyers suddenly announced over the radio. "Possible stealth signature bearing 127 Mark 9. "I see it," another voice responded. "All ships, focus sensors on grid 7 Alpha. Target may be using adaptive camouflage." Marcus smiled grimly as the enemy ships began to concentrate their search in completely the wrong direction. While they hunted for shadows, the Harmony slipped past their perimeter and approached the flagship from its blind spot. "Vengeance of the Pure," Marcus identified, reading the ship's energy signature. "Divine Class Heavy Dreadnought, Admiral Kethmore commanding. Modified shield array exactly where it should be." He began programming their remaining torpedoes for a very specific type of attack, one that Zara had never seen before. Instead of aiming for structural damage, he was calibrating them to create precisely timed energy pulses that would interact with the flagship's modified shield systems. "When I fire these torpedoes, we'll have exactly 37 seconds before the shields come back online," Marcus explained. "That's how long it will take us to reach the bridge section and deliver our main attack." "What main attack? We've used all our heavy weapons." Marcus's smile was cold and predatory. "No, we haven't. We still have one weapon left." "What weapon?" "The ship itself." The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. "Marcus, you're talking about a ramming attack. That's suicide." "Not necessarily. The Harmony has escape pods with their own propulsion systems. We can eject at the last second and let the ship's momentum carry it into the target. Even if we survive the ejection, we'll be floating in space in the middle of an enemy fleet." "Maybe. But Admiral Kethmore will be dead. The flagship will be destroyed. And the Pure Flame Fleet will collapse. The peace will be preserved, and 50 million people will live." Zara realized that Marcus had been planning this moment from the beginning. Every attack, every maneuver, every tactical decision had been building toward this final sacrifice. He had never intended to survive this mission. "There has to be another way," she insisted. "There isn't time to find one," Marcus replied. "The pure flame reinforcements will arrive in 6 hours. If we don't end this now, Veltar Prime falls, and the war starts again." The torpedoes struck the flagship's shields with perfect timing, creating the cascade failure that Marcus had predicted. The massive ship's defensive grid flickered and died, leaving it vulnerable for exactly 37 seconds. "Escape pods armed and ready," Marcus announced. "Collision course locked in. Zara, it's been an honor serving with you." "Marcus, wait!" But he had already triggered the final attack sequence. The Harmony accelerated toward the enemy flagship's bridge section, its remaining fuel feeding directly into the engines for maximum impact velocity. At the last possible second, Marcus activated the escape pods, sending them both hurtling away from their doomed ship. The collision was spectacular. The Harmony struck the flagship's command section with the force of a small asteroid, its hull cracking open like an egg as it released all its remaining energy in a single catastrophic explosion. The blast tore through the flagship's superstructure, vaporizing the bridge and everything within 100 meters of the impact point. Admiral Kethmore died instantly, along with most of his senior staff. Without central command, the Pure Flame fleet began to disintegrate as individual captains made their own decisions about whether to continue the fight or withdraw. Most chose withdrawal, especially after they realized that their massive advantage in numbers had been neutralized by a single small ship and 2 determined pilots. Zara's escape pod was recovered by a Calorian patrol boat 3 hours later. Marcus's pod took longer to find, but when they finally located him, he was alive and largely uninjured. The first thing he asked about was the status of Veltar Prime and whether the evacuation had been completed. "The planet is secure," Captain Morden told him as medical teams checked both pilots for injuries. The Pure Flame fleet retreated to the outer rim. Their attack completely failed. "And the peace process?" "Stronger than ever. Both governments are calling you heroes. There's talk of commissioning a monument to commemorate the battle." Marcus looked uncomfortable with the praise. "We were just doing our jobs." "No," Zara corrected him. "You were doing something much more important than that." In the weeks that followed, Marcus became something of a legend in both human and Calorian space. Military analysts studied recordings of the battle, trying to understand how one small ship had defeated an entire fleet. His tactics were added to fleet training programs, and his name was mentioned alongside the greatest naval commanders in history. But Marcus himself seemed unchanged by the fame. He returned to his diplomatic duties with the same quiet determination he had always shown, working to strengthen the bonds between their peoples and prevent future conflicts. "Do you regret it?" Zara asked him one evening as they watched ships arrive and depart from Terminus Point, carrying trade goods and passengers between human and Calorian worlds. "Regret what?" "Giving up your secret identity, revealing what you really are." Marcus considered the question carefully, as he considered everything. "No," he said finally. "I spent 10 years hiding who I was, pretending to be someone else. It's nice to finally be honest about it." "Even though it means you can never go back to deep reconnaissance work?" "I never wanted to go back to that life," Marcus replied. "I came here to build peace, not to fight wars. The fact that I had to use my old skills one more time doesn't change that." Zara studied her husband's profile as he watched the stars. The quiet diplomat and the deadly warrior were the same person, she realized. The skills that made him effective in combat also made him effective in negotiation. The patience, the careful observation, the ability to see patterns and predict outcomes, the willingness to sacrifice himself for the greater good. "I understand now why the human colonies chose you for this mission," she said. "What do you mean?" "They didn't just send a diplomat to marry me for political reasons. They sent someone who could protect the peace if it was threatened, someone who would fight for it if necessary. Marcus smiled. Maybe they did. Or maybe they just sent someone who was tired of fighting and wanted to try building something instead. Their marriage had begun as a political arrangement, but it had become something much deeper. They had faced the ultimate test together, risking everything to preserve the future they were trying to build. In doing so, they had proven that humans and Calorians could indeed work together, trust each other, and create something greater than either species could achieve alone. The peace held, trade flourished, new colonies were established in systems that both species agreed to share, and on Terminus Point, two diplomats continued their work of building bridges between worlds, secure in the knowledge that they would defend what they had built together, no matter the cost. Marcus Chen, the quiet colonial administrator who had married an alien princess to secure peace, had revealed himself to be exactly what the galaxy needed. A warrior who fought not for conquest or glory, but for the simple, profound goal of allowing different peoples to live together in harmony. And Zarathel, who had chosen a human husband to fulfill a political obligation, had discovered that she had married not just a man, but a legend who would be remembered as long as their peoples flew among the stars.